A luxury hotel room, a single gunshot, a woman with absolutely no past, no identity, and no logical reason to vanish so perfectly. Welcome back to Crimetale. In today's explainer, we're stepping into the shoes of investigative documentarians to dissect a true crime enigma that, honestly, reads exactly like a high-stakes intelligence thriller. We are diving into the impossible death of a woman we only know as Jennifer Fairgate. And let me tell you, the more we examine the cold, clinical facts of this case, the more the official story just completely falls apart.
Okay, let's drop right into the middle of the action. Picture this. It's the Oslo Plaza Hotel, room 2805, Saturday, June 3rd, 1995, at exactly 7:50 p.m. A part-time security guard is standing in a quiet, carpeted hallway. He's just been sent up to check on a guest who hasn't paid her bill. He steps up to the door and knocks. Seconds later, a single deafening gunshot rings out from inside the room. Now, what's absolutely fascinating about this moment is what happens next. Or, actually, scratch that. It's what doesn't happen.
Because right here, we enter the most agonizing critical window in this entire case, a 15-minute gap. At 7:50 p.m., the guard hears the shot. But instead of radioing for immediate backup, which, might alert the whole hotel, he actually retreats down to the ground floor to find the security chief in person. By 7:51 p.m., that room is completely unmonitored, zero eyes on the door. It isn't until 8:04 p.m. that the security chief finally arrives and unlocks the room. Now, this tick-tock pacing is absolutely crucial to understand. Why? Because in the world of covert operations, 15 unguarded minutes isn't just a delay, it's an eternity. It is more than enough time for a professional cleanup team to finish a job, stage a scene, and pull off a hasty, unseen escape right down a back stairwell.
Let's rewind a bit to Section 1, the Phantom check-in. To figure out how we got to that single gunshot, we really need to go back in time to May 31st and ask a pretty basic question. How did an entirely unidentified woman even get into room 2085 in the first place? When you look at standard security protocols for a luxury five-star hotel in 1995, especially one famous for hosting international diplomats, the routine is strict, right? You show an ID or a passport, you put a credit card on file, they verify your home address. But our Phantom guest, she bypassed all of it, the whole shebang. She paid entirely in cold, hard cash. No ID was ever requested, let alone shown. She jotted down an address in Verlaine, Belgium, which investigators later figured out was completely fake. She checked in under the alias Jennifer Fairgate and even mysteriously added a male companion named Louis Fairgate to the registration. The kicker? That guy was literally never seen. So we're looking at either a baffling, colossal failure of hotel security or a brilliant manipulation of a busy check-in desk by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. And the red flags definitely don't stop at the front desk. Over the next 3 days, her behavior was, frankly, bizarre. For starters, she misspelled her own fake last name, signing it Fergate on 2 separate occasions. Witnesses noted she spoke fluent English, but also German with a very distinct East German accent. A do not disturb sign was practically glued to her door for her entire stay. But here's the biggest anomaly of all, the keycard data. The hotel's electronic locks proved she was completely absent from her room for a solid 20 to 24-hour block. Just gone. Where was she? Who in the world was she meeting? Meanwhile, the maids noted that on the rare occasions they did get inside, the room was exceptionally tidy, and that extra comforter she requested for the invisible Lois, never even used.
Moving on to Section 2, an impossible crime scene.
So, we have this Phantom guest acting incredibly strangely. Now, let's look at the sheer absurdity of the physical evidence left behind when the security chief finally opened that double-locked door at 8:04 p.m. Think about what you'd expect to find when a young woman travels internationally. It's pretty straightforward. A passport, a wallet, maybe some keys, toiletries, regular outfits. What investigators actually found completely defies logic. There was a nearly empty bottle of men's cologne, an acid-washed 9mm Browning pistol in her hand, and inside her black-brown Buffalo attaché case, 25 extra rounds of 9mm ammunition plus 7 more in the magazine. That is 34 rounds of heavy, military-grade ammo. Does that sound like a standard business trip or a weekend vacation to you? But as any seasoned investigator will tell you, sometimes the absolute loudest clues are the ones that are missing entirely. All of her identification and money, completely gone. Toiletries, a hairbrush, makeup,
non-existent. But here's the detail that always gives me chills. The tags were meticulously snipped out of almost every single piece of clothing she owned. The only exception was a René Lazard blazer, and that's likely just because cutting the tag would have destroyed the lining. On top of that, she had absolutely zero bottom half clothing in the room. No pants, no skirts, nothing except the silk shorts she was wearing. And when authorities finally ran her DNA and fingerprints, they yielded 0 database matches worldwide. This is what we call omission as evidence. Whoever cleaned this room systematically, intentionally erased her entire existence.
And then we get to the ballistics. The forensic impossibilities here literally shatter the official police ruling of a 99.9% certainty of suicide. Okay, first, yes, the door was double locked from the inside, but the weapon itself, highly suspect. The 9mm Browning was found in the super awkward, atypical grip with her thumb still resting right on the trigger. Now, a semi-automatic weapon recoils violently when fired. It is practically impossible for a human hand to maintain that kind of rigid grip after pulling the trigger. Next, there was 0 blood spatter on her hands or her clothes, despite a massive wound and the rest of the room being covered in spatter. There was 0 gunshot residue on her hands, none. And finally, 2 shots were fired in that room. One of them was a test shot, or maybe a warning shot, fired directly through a flipped pillow. These forensic facts just do not, in any reality, align with a standard suicide.
I want us just to pause here for a second and really think about this. Consider the facts we've just laid out. A locked room, no DNA matches anywhere in the world, an untraceable acid-washed weapon, tags systematically cut from clothing. Does this honestly sound like a tragic, wildly elaborate suicide to you, or are we looking at a perfectly staged professional execution?
Which brings us to Section 3, the espionage angle.
Because if this wasn't a suicide, we are looking at a high-level covert cover-up. To really grasp the weight of this theory, we have to turn to Ola Kaldiger, a former Norwegian intelligence officer. After reviewing the meticulous clinical details of this case, he stated it flatly. He said, her death was meant to look like a suicide, even though she was executed. And historically, we know this happens. Certain intelligence agencies like the Russian KGB or Israeli Mossad, both of which had a heavy operational footprint in Norway during the 1990s, have been known to stage targeted killings to look exactly like locked-room suicides.
Real CIA operatives like John Cipher look at the methods used in Room 2805 and immediately recognize them as standard deep-cover intelligence tradecraft. It's textbook. The meticulous removal of what spies call pocket litter, meaning IDs, receipts, keys, anything tying you to the real world. The use of throwaway aliases and fake European origins. The utilization of luxury hotels for operational meetings, which, by the way, perfectly explains that completely unaccounted for 24-hour absence. There's even a really strong theory that she was a former East German Stasi operative leveraging her skills out in the cold after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And of course, the acid-wash serial numbers on a heavy military-grade weapon. It is, point for point, a masterclass in intelligence operations.
But, even the best, most clinical cleanup teams make mistakes. They missed one absolutely crucial thing: the Citizen Aqualand CQ 1021-50. This is a clunky military provenance dive watch, complete with a no decompression limit chart printed right on the strap. It was completely, glaringly out of place on the wrist of an elegant 20-something woman staying in a luxury hotel. This is a robust tool watch, the kind often issued directly to elite naval units, and it is the single piece of physical evidence that the cleanup team failed to sanitize.
And that brings us to our final, lingering thought for today's explainer. Somewhere out there, there was a watchmaker who installed the battery in that Citizen Aqualand back in March of 1995. Someone, somewhere, knows the real truth about room 2805. A locked room, an unguarded 15-minute gap, a spy who quite literally vanished into thin air. So we have to leave you with this deeply unsettling question: who exactly was Jennifer Fairgate?